Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay, so I guess we can start um tonight's meeting. Okay, so let's start it up. So tonight you are looking at section 5 and you are looking to solve some questions. So this is what we're going to do. By 9, we should be done with section 5. The reason why I'm saying that by 9 we should be done with section 5 is that basically yesterday we did discuss a lot of things to be done under question 5 already. So I'll just be going through them again. So that would be a little bit quick and fast, and then so that we will solve some questions and we'll bring the session to a closure. All right, so under section 5, we are going to look at what unemployment is, and then we are going to look at the computation of the unemployment rate. We look at the types and causes of unemployment, and then we look at effects of unemployment in an economy or in the economy. So these are the 4 things that we are going to look at under this section. So yesterday we did define what unemployment is. We said unemployment basically occurs or is a situation when you have people who are willing and able to work, okay, but then and are also looking for jobs, but the system cannot offer them one, okay. So the main thing to denote in the definition of unemployment is that the people must be willing, okay. The people must be willing. They must have the willpower to work, okay. They must be able, okay. They must have the ability to work. So, for example, if a person who has a psychological disorder tells you that he wants to, who is in asylum, okay, or who is in a psychiatric hospital, tells you that he wants to work. The question is, the person is willing to work, but that particular person is not able to work. So you don't tag that as unemployment. The person is not unemployed. For the person, or if the person is sick in the hospital and the person tells you he wants to work, but then as at that point in time, the person is not able to work, we don't tag that as unemployment, okay? And a person should also be looking for a job. That is, if we are to make an active job offer to the person should be able to accept the job offer, okay? So if the person is has the ability to work, okay, but it's not willing or it's not actively searching for a job, we do not tag that as unemployment, okay? So unemployment is just a situation where people are willing and able to work, but the system cannot offer them jobs, so they cannot find jobs to do. That is what we define as unemployment in this particular scope. So full employment of workers in a country is critical to achieving higher levels of GDP than will be possible with idle workers. So idle labor market, or in the idle labor market, in order for us to attain a full employment, we have to attain a scenario where the demand for labor has to be equal to the supply of labor, okay. So we can denote this easily with a simple curve, okay. So let's tag this curve as so wages and then demand and supply, okay. So this you have this equilibrium scenario where the demand curve directly intersects with the supply curve, and then that particular condition occurs at a given wage, and that becomes your equilibrium wage. So at the equilibrium wage, demand for labor is equal to supply of labor. Let's tag it as wage 0, okay? So that is the equilibrium condition. A second. Someone is asking if the screen is being shared. Please, can everyone see my screen, please?
I can see it clearly.
Okay. So we can continue. So please, if you're encountering such a problem, I recommend that probably you log out and then you come back in. Maybe that could fix your problem. Okay, so that is the equilibrium scenario. So at the equilibrium wage, the demand for labor and the supply of labor are equal. But again, I stated this yesterday that this particular situation is only theoretical. It is not practical. It has very little practical implication. What we mean by this has very little practical implication is that if you come to the practical world, there is basically little to no scenario where the demand for labor will be equal to the supply for labor, okay, irrespective of what the wage level will be. Always one will exceed the other. Either the demand for labor will be greater than the supply of labor. And please, let's take note of this. If the demand for, or if the supply of labor, okay, exceeds the demand for labor, there will be unemployment, okay. And if the demand for labor is less than the supply of labor. No, please. If the demand for labor is less than the supply of labor, there will be unemployment. Okay, so we have employers kind of needing. No. If the supply for labor is greater than the demand for labor, there will be unemployment. Sorry, and if the demand for labor is lesser than the supply for labor, automatically you have a scenario where the employers will not have people working for them. Okay, so yeah, so thus all workers would be fully employed as at that particular stage. However, there is always unemployment even when the economy is doing well. So irrespective of the scenario, there would still be some level of unemployment. And the unemployment rate is never zero, okay? There is never a practical scenario where the unemployment rate is never zero. We are saying that in the ideal scene, we can say that unemployment has been reduced to the bare minimum if it's between 4 to 7 percent. Okay, in some scenarios we can say 5 to 7%. That is a rate that is deemed as idle. Okay, at that rate we say that unemployment is at the bare minimum. So there are a number of questions that arises. How does the government measure the economy's rate of unemployment? What problems arise in interpreting the unemployment data, and how long are the unemployed typically without work? So we factor all these things when we are calculating unemployment. So this is how we calculate the various metrics in unemployment. Okay, so these are the key words or key concepts that you need to know. And please, this is very, very important in order to solve questions, especially the questions in our past questions. We have to understand that in the scope of macroeconomics, okay, when we say somebody is employed, he or she has spent most of the previous week working. Okay, so one, the previous week or the particular time frame that we are talking about, the person should have at least spent a week working. And then the person shouldn't just be working for any number of hours. The number of hours should be at least an hour. Okay, so we say somebody is unemployed if he has spent most of the previous week working at least more than 1 hour. Okay, so at least the person has been working for more than 1 hour, okay, and we can tag the person as someone who is employed, okay, or as an unpaid worker in a family business. So the person could be at a paid job or in their own business, or as an unpaid worker in a family business. So it doesn't matter whether the person is paid or not, okay. So far as the person has worked greater than an hour in the specific time duration, we can term the person as employed. Any other thing aside this is not termed as employment. Okay, so we also include full-time, part-time. It doesn't matter whether you are full-time, part-time, or the person is just temporarily absent from work. So far as within that period of time, the person worked for more than an hour, we can say that the person is actively employed. So let's say within this week, you worked on Monday, you worked on Tuesday, then let's say between Wednesday to Sunday, something happened, or you had an emergency and you couldn't report for work. Please, the person is still employed. So far as the person has worked for more than 1 week within that period of time, we can say the person is employed. But please, an exception will be the case where the person has been sacked or the person has decided to quit his job. That is an exception. And the reason why that is an exception is because we said here that this includes full-time, part-time workers, or the person is temporarily absent from work. Okay, the person being absent should be temporary. It should not be permanent, or we shouldn't have the scenario where the person is permanently away from work. That person was said to be unemployed, or that person will not be employed. So this is the entire scope that we use to define what employment is under macroeconomics. When you are solving questions, you see scenarios which are close to justifying the definition for employment, but are outside the scope of employment. And those kind of scenarios, we have to be able to distinguish them from the person being employed. Okay. So unemployment. So when we talk about unemployment, we are basically talking about the situation where a person is available for work. Okay, but a person is available for work. The person has tried and is trying to find work within a specific time period, which is our reference time period, but then the person has not been able to find work to do. That is when you say the person is unemployed, okay? So the person is not working, okay? So without work, 1, 2, the person is willing to work, okay? That is 3, and the person is able to work and is currently looking for work. But that person is said to be unemployed. And there is a twist to this that later we are going to look at. Okay. So okay, let me define the twist here. Okay. So the twist is that there is a group of people who we call the discouraged workers. The discouraged workers are basically a group of workers or a section of workers who, for them, they are available for work. Okay. If they get a job, they will do. Okay. And they are without work. All right. But they are not trying to find work. Probably in the past, they've been attempting to find a job to do. And they've kept attempting and attempting and attempting. But the system have not been able to offer them jobs and they've given up. Okay. So let's say a teacher, let's use Amma as a case study. Okay. Please, Amma here is an imaginary figure. Sorry if probably it coincides with your name or something. Okay, we are just using that for an assumption. So Amma is an imaginary figure here, and let's say Amma has completed teachers training college. Okay, and Amma is hoping to be posted to a public school, but Amma has not been posted. Amma is available for work. So she decided to go around and go and look for work to do, both teaching or maybe in another field. But Amma kept looking and looking for work to do, and within 2 years, Amma couldn't still find job to do. So she gave up. That now, okay, if she gets a job, she'll do. Okay, she's at home. If she gets a job, she'll do. But she's no more finding a job. That means she's no more going around saying she's no more finding work to do. Okay, or she's not trying at all to get employed. Amma is said to be unemployed in this scenario. Why? Because those set of people are called discouraged workers. Okay, they are termed as discouraged workers. Whenever you are given a set of data and you are supposed to compute the number of people unemployed, okay, and a figure is not given to you as a handy, please make sure that the discouraged workers are not included, okay. And please, again, let me come back to let me come back here, okay. No. Let me. I think that will be at unemployment also. So please, when you are also counting unemployment and employment, you don't look at people who are institutionalized. So what you mean by institutionalized is people who are in or caught up in an institution like the prison. Okay, those people are not counted. We don't count them as part of I mean people who are employed or unemployed. People who are in the military are also institutionalized, okay? We don't count those people. We don't also count people who are in, let's say, asylum, okay? People who are in mental institutions, people who are in schools. Although those people are adults or are in the adult population and they are in the working age, we don't count them as either employed or unemployed. No, we don't count them at all. What we term as working age in macroeconomics are people who are 16 and above. Anything below this are not termed as adult population. Okay, please, when we go down and we are solving questions, we would apply all these things. So it's important that you try and grab this concept. So not in the labor force. Those are persons who fit in neither of these categories, such as full-time students, housemakers, or retirees. Okay, so that is what I stated earlier. Those people are not considered as to be part of the labor force. If you want to compute the labor force is equal to, I'll use LS for labor force. So the labor force is equal to the number of people employed, okay? So we compute the sum of the number of people employed plus number of people unemployed. This gives us our labor force, okay? So generally, what the labor force seeks to do is that the labor force seeks to know all the total number of people who are available to work, okay, or are already working. That is what the labor force is, okay. The labor force is very different from the working people who are within the working age or people who are in the adult population. Is different from labor force. Please, in generic terms, we might define labor force as people who are above 16, but please, that is not the case for macroeconomics. Labor force is basically referring to people who are currently working or people who are willing and are searching for jobs. Those are the people that we classify as the labor force. Okay, so as example, people who have retired or people who are on pension, we don't classify them as labor force. Why? Because they are neither employed and they are not also looking for jobs, or they are not willing and ready to work as at that point in time. So you don't classify them as part of the labor force. Another set of people who we wouldn't classify as part of the labor force is people who are, again, let's say, though they are above 16, but let's say they are institutionalized, okay? They found themselves in a hospital or places where they cannot work, okay? So those people are not also classified as part of the labor force. So whenever you are asked to calculate the labor force, we always add the employment plus unemployment. So example, if you are given a question and the total number of people employed is, let's say, 7,000, and the total number of people unemployed, this is the number of people employed. The total number of people unemployed is, let's say, 3,000. Then the labor force will be employed plus unemployed, which will be 7,000 plus 3,000. That gives you 10,000. And that becomes your LF, which is your labor force. Okay. I'm sorry, I said.
Mr. Isaac,
Yeah, Kayum, you have a question?
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Why is it that soldiers are not classified as employed people?
Okay, so basically, when you're talking about unemployment, per the standard definition, we exclude people who are institutionalized. Okay, people who are institutionalized in the sense that, look, someone can be a military officer, okay, and he can be in the barracks, and he can be there for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and a person might not be as in undertaking any economic activity within that period of time. Okay, those people are institutionalized. They are not available for employment, and basically we just exclude them from the both the employment and unemployment data. Okay, so they are just how do you call it? We don't classify them as in the labor force. They are just not in the labor force. So it's just like people who are in prison. Okay, the only difference between someone who, okay, let me not run this parallel. Okay, so if you take someone who is locked up in a prison, let's say he's locked up in a, how do you call this, in a correctional center or something like that, they can be there and undertake whatsoever, but we don't just classify them as part of the labor force because they are institutionalized. Okay, so the key word is here is that they are institutionalized, and once they are institutionalized or confined within a particular institution, we don't tag them as employed.
Okay.
So please let's kindly denote that. So let's come down. So we've looked at the labor force. So we said the labor force is equal to employed plus unemployed. But you see, you can be given a question where instead of they asking you to find a labor force, they will ask you to find a number of people employed. Please and please, this is what you do. Since you know that labor force is equal to employed plus unemployed, okay? If you are asked to find employed, you just do change of subject, okay? So here, what are you going to do? We are going to say that employed is equal to labor force minus unemployed, okay? So that gives us the number of people employed. And if you want to find the number of people unemployed, we will say the number of people unemployed is equal to the labor force minus the number of people who are employed. Okay, when you are solving questions, these things will be much easier to fathom. So measurements of unemployment. Okay, so unemployment is measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is in the United States, as follows. It surveys 60,000 randomly selected households every month. The survey is called the Current Population Survey. Based on the answers to the survey questions, the BLS places each adult over 16 years, which we said are the people who are considered as the adult population. Please, let's take note of the keywords. So adult population is very, very important. You know what adult population means, because along the line, we are going to employ them in some calculations, or they can be given to you in a data and you'll be made to make calculations based on them. Okay, so when we are talking about adult population, we are talking about people who are over 16 years old. And those same people can be tagged as people who are within the working age. Okay, so it just sits above 16 into one of the three categories: employed, unemployed, and not in the labor force. Okay, so when they are basically looking at the number of people who are unemployed, they conduct a survey using 60,000 random selected households every month. Okay, and then out of that, they are looking to interview people who are above 16 years, who are within the adult population. And for that people, the metric that they cover is the number of people who are employed, unemployed, and people who are not in the labor force. So basically, let's take note of this here. People who are not in the labor force, okay, are just people who are in the adult population, but are not employed or unemployed. Those people are said to be are not to be in the labor force. Okay. So let me define that again. These are people who are in the adult population, but are neither employed or unemployed because they might be institutionalized. Such people might be, how do you put it? They might be discouraged workers. We said discouraged workers are people who, if they get a job, they will do, but currently they are not looking for a job. Okay, so they are willing to work, but they are not currently in search of jobs. So all those people are classified and are not in the labor force, because look, we said in calculating the labor force, we add employed to unemployed. So anybody who does not fit the definition of employed or unemployed is termed to not be in the labor force. Okay, but please, again, that person must not also be below 16 years. We don't classify people who are below 16 years also in the not in the labor force category. Let's take note of this. So let's take note of this very well. So we said that based on the answers to the survey, the BLS places each adult, so the keyword is an adult who is over 16 years. And these are the people who are placed into the employed, unemployed, or not in a labor force category. So if the person is not an adult or above 16 years at the first place, he's not qualified to be in the not in the labor force category either. Those people are just out of the equation altogether, and they are not even qualified or classified when we are talking about the entire issue of the being in the labor force or not being in the labor force. They are not even counted at all. So let's distinguish that. So in Ghana, the Ghana Statistical Service calculates the unemployment rate either using the population and housing census. If you remember, during 2021, some people came around to our houses with tablets, right? And they were asking questions. They will ask you, are you employed? Yes or no? Oh, if you're not employed, what do you do? I'm a student. I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. And they will ask you questions like, okay, where do you work? The name of the place where you work, what you do. They would ask a lot of questions, okay, seeking to take both information about you, the person, what you do, your housing conditions, those kind of stuff. So in Ghana, that is what we basically use to determine, how do we call it, the employment and unemployment data in people who are not in the labor force. So the Ghana Living Standard Survey, which is GLSS, a multi-purpose survey, the last round GLS, that is, was conducted around 2012, 2013, assessed 15,000 randomly selected households nationwide. The working age population in Ghana is 15 plus years. Okay, so if you are talking about a broader sense, you are talking about 16 plus, but if you are talking about Ghana in specific, that is 15 plus. Okay, but please, for the purpose of macroeconomics, we use 16 plus to do all computations and calculations. So measurements of unemployment. So now, after we've known the number of people who are employed or people who are unemployed, we can calculate further metrics. Okay, and one of the metrics that we can calculate is the unemployment rate. Okay, when we talk about rate, we are basically talking about the ratio of unemployed people to the labor force times 100. Okay, which is unemployed over the labor force times 100. We said that the labor force is equal to employed plus unemployed. So please, I'm stating this for a reason, okay? Because I'm stating this for a reason. I saw one data response question where in the table they gave only the number of people who were employed, okay? And they gave the labor force, and they gave the labor force participation rates. I mean, they gave unemployment rate, labor force participation rate, and they asked you to calculate the number of people who are unemployed. In such scenario, you should know that unemployment rate is unemployed over labor force times 100, which can also be written as unemployed over labor forces, the same unemployed plus employed, okay, times 100. So I'm just denoting this in case we are solving that question, you can remember. So this labor force here is a summation of this same unemployed rate and then the employed rate. Okay, so let's just denote that, or take note of that. So please, the formula is static and it is the same for all circumstances or scenarios. If you're asked to find the unemployment rates, okay, you know rate is always to percentage, right? So you take the number of people who are unemployed all over the number of people who ideally should be employed, which is a labor force, okay, and then multiply it by 100. So let's take a practical question here. Assuming you are given a question or a data, okay, and in the data you are told that the number of people who are unemployed are, let's say, out of 15 people, the number of people who are employed is, let's say, 7. Okay, the number of people who are unemployed is 7. The number of people who are employed is 3. Okay, find the unemployment rate. This is how you are going to solve such a question. In the question, you were given only unemployed and employed, but you know that unemployment rate is equal to the number of people unemployed over the labor force times 100. So you have unemployed, which is 7, okay, all over your labor force. Now, you were not ideally given the labor force in the question, but you know that the labor force is the unemployed plus employed, which is 7 plus 3, okay? That gives you what? 10, okay? And then the result is multiplied by 100, okay? So 0 cancels 0. 7 times 10 is 70. So you can say that your unemployment rate is 70%, which is pretty huge. Okay. So please, did you understand what we just did here? Are you all good with what we just did here? Okay. So please, if you have any question at any point in time, you can feel free to ask. So the labor force participation rates, on the other hand, is the percentage of the adult population. This is where the whole adult population thing comes in. And we said the definition of adult population is 16 and above, or people who are greater than 16. We classify those people as adult population. And it's very, very important that you're able to denote what goes into this metrics, because sometimes you can be given a question and they will just, instead of just giving you directly that the adult population is this, they can just give you, let's say, 16. They will give you the, let's say, the population, okay, or the total population, and then they will tell you that the number of people who are below 16. Let's say, let me illustrate such a question. So you'll be told that the total population, okay, you'll be told that the total population is, let's say, 50,000. And then this total population includes babies who are 6 months, 2 months old, 1 year old, 3 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old. And they'll tell you that people who are less than 6 years old and people who are below 16 years, who are 16, below 16 years old are, let's say, 10,000. Okay. And then alongside, you'll be given the labor force. So the labor force is equal to, then they'll give you whichever figure, okay? Let's say 30,000. And they'll tell you to calculate the labor force participation rate. Quoting the formula is simply not enough. You have to understand the metrics in the formula. So labor force participation rate, okay, we are talking about the number of people in the adult population, okay, who are currently participating in the labor force. That is what we call the labor force participation rate. So it is the average of the labor force to the adult population times 100, which is labor force over adult population times 100, okay? So in this particular scenario, what do? We know that the labor force is 30,000, right? So we take 30,000 all over. Then we have the adult population, right? In this scenario, the adult population is not given, but we know that we have people who are below 16 are 10,000, and the total population is 50,000. So if we subtract people who are not supposed to be part of the adult population from our total population, we are going to get our adult population. So our adult population are basically going to be our total population plus people who are below 16 years. That gives us the people who are above 16 years, okay? In this scenario, our adult population will be 50,000 minus 10,000, which is 40,000. And then we multiply our result by 100. Okay, so our 3 zeros here are going to cancel our 3 zeros here. 0 here is going to cancel 0 here. So we are going to have 3 over 4 times 100, okay? So 4 going to 100, I believe 25 times, right? Yeah, so 25 times 3, that gives you 75. 75% becomes our labor force participation rate, okay? So to calculate the labor force participation rate, you take your labor force and divide it by your adult population and multiply it by 100. Please, you divide it by your adult population, not any other metric. Adult population, okay? So other terms that they can use for adult population in a typical diagram would be something like people who are within the working age, okay? Working age is still the same as adult population. All right, so adult population here is referring to people who are both employed, people who are unemployed, and people who are not in the labor force, who are basically above 16 years. We don't care whether they are not in the labor force. We don't care if the person is a madman. So far as he's above 16 years, he's part of the adult population. We don't care if the person is a prisoner. We don't care if the person is paralyzed in 37 military hospital, or if the person is sick and cannot work, okay, we still count that person, or the person is aged, or the person is old, okay, we classify that person as part of the adult population. But when it comes to the labor force, we only look at employed and unemployed only, okay. That's okay. So in any scenario where we are giving the adult population and you are not giving the labor force, but you are giving the number of people who are not in the labor force, just subtract the number of people who are not in the labor force from the adult population, and you get the number of people who are in the labor force. Please, I don't know if you got that. Okay. Using this here, what you are basically saying is that, look, the main difference between people in the adult population and people who are in the labor force is just one key section, which is people who are not in the labor force. So people who are not in the labor force, i.e., are mad, okay, are aged, are institutionalized, are in the hospital and they are paralyzed and cannot work. All those people who are counted in the adult population, so far as they are 16 years and above, okay, when it comes to the labor force, the person must also be 16 years and above to even qualify to belong to the labor force at the first place, okay? And that person should be either employed or unemployed, but cannot be in this red section or this orange section, which is not in the labor force. That means that if we subtract this orange section from our adult population, which is if we take out the people who are not in the labor force from our adult population, we are automatically going to get our labor force. Okay, so all these are ways in which questions can be tricked. You can be given a data or a metric. You will not be given the labor force, but you'll be given the adult population and people who are not in the labor force. In order to find the labor force, just subtract the people who are not in the labor force from the adult population, and you are good to go. All right, so at this point, please, hope we are all okay up to this point. And please hope we are all okay up to this point. Okay. So let's look at, so we are leaving the calculation section at CRA, okay. And the next thing I'm going to do another calculation will be solving of questions. That's why I was asking if we are all okay up to this point before we just skip that section entirely. So please, the types of unemployment and the causes of unemployment, okay. So we explained that yesterday, but I'm going to explain that for the sake of those who were not here during yesterday's meeting. We said that unemployment can take various forms, but they can take different forms. Please, the types of unemployment are not limited to what we have here. You only have 4 here, okay, but there are more to them. But the major types are these 4. In some scenarios, other types are classified under these 4 types. For example, someone can say that voluntary unemployment is a type of unemployment, but voluntary unemployment can still be in one way or the other fit into other types, but it just depends on what you exactly want to do. In the examination, if some question comes, you can mention that and define it. That's depends on your discretion. Okay, so types of unemployment include, we have frictional unemployment. We said it yesterday is that frictional unemployment is basically the unemployment that is caused when someone is transitioning from one job to another, or is entering into the how do you call it? Or is entering into the workforce for the first time, okay? Probably, let's say the person is 16 years old and he just completed college and wants to, he's 17. He just completed college and wants to work, okay? Then the period of time where he completed college, okay, where he now became fit to participate in the labor force, okay, and the period of time where he's going to gain a job can also be classified as frictional. Or we can also talk about the period of time it takes a person to transition between one job to another. So in all these scenarios, we are talking about transitioning between one type of job to another. And a case study is a teacher. Let's use the same Amma as our case study, okay? So Amma again is a teacher who works in, let's say, Cedar Hills International School, okay, as a teacher. And then one day she decided that she doesn't want to work in Cedar Hills anymore. She wants another experience. So she submits an application letter to an institution, okay, and she's confident that she would be called. And then she leaves Cedar Hills and come and stay home. Let's say she comes home in January. And then between January to March, let's say Cedar Hills were not ready to employ in January, but they were ready to employ in March. So Amma has to stay home between January to March before she was called to come and work in another institution, okay? This period of time, that is January to March, where Amma was not working, is termed as frictional unemployment, okay? In a sense, it can also be deemed voluntary, okay? That's what I'm saying. You can fit unemployment types like voluntary into other sectors. It can be deemed as voluntary because as at that point in time, it isn't as though Amma did not have a job or Amma could not be working, but it is because she did not want to work. Why? Because she was transitioning between one job to another, okay? And that kind of unemployment is termed as frictional unemployment. That is a time period that it takes a person to transition between one job to another, or it takes a person to find their first job when they first enter into the labor force or whatsoever. So the next is seasonal unemployment. So seasonal unemployment, on the other hand, is a type of unemployment that occurs, okay, as a result of changes in seasons. And yesterday we used Kayum gave an example, right? Mr. Kayum gave an example, and his example he gave was farmers, okay, in our in farming areas. Let me put it like that. So when you go to our farming areas, you meet men and women who are farmers, okay? Some of them are full-time farmers. They have no other jobs apart from farming. What happens here is that their job is seasonal. They can only farm during the rainfall seasons, okay? Please always explain your points to justify always structure your explanation to justify the point. If you are using a farmer as an example to explain your point, please make sure you explain it thoroughly to represent people who are farming without irrigational facilities. Okay, if you go and mention a farmer is broad. You can go abroad and then you find farmers who farm throughout the year. Okay, they will farm from January to December. Why? Because they have mechanized farming systems. They have irrigation systems available for them. In the rainy season, they will farm. In the dry season, those people will still farm. Okay, so those people are typically outside the case of seasonal unemployment. So you have to make sure that you justify that, or make sure that you make the whoever is going to mark your work understand that the farmers that you are referring to are farmers who do not have access to irrigational facilities, okay, and depend on rainfall, okay, to farm. And that is the only logical justification for seasonal unemployment for the case of farmers, okay. So these farmers, when it is during the rain, when it is rainfall, they plant their crops and they farm, and then they harvest after. After the rainfall is over, they cannot continue farming because they are heavily dependent on rainfall, which is seasonal in nature. So during the rainy season, they are employed. During the season when the rainfall is over, or during the dry season, they are unemployed. Okay, they are willing to work. They are searching for jobs perhaps, but their current job structure, which is farming, is unavailable or cannot provide them with employment. And the seasonal unemployment, you can also use an example like an umbrella company, okay, as an example, because an umbrella also has a seasonal demand. During the rainy season, people demand more umbrellas, so more workers will be employed in that industry. But what happens when the rainy season is over? The demand drops. Although the demand might not come down to zero, but it will drop to an insignificant figure. Okay. And the workers have to be laid off and they'll be unemployed and they will have to be home till the next season is up again. But please, when it comes to seasonal unemployment, there is a catch. And let me show you the catch right here. Okay. And that's seasonal unemployment. Okay, so we said mainly they occur in the agricultural sector due to seasonal changes in the weather conditions. Farmers lay down their tools in the system and may also be associated with tourist pattern, okay? But in some scenarios, please take note of this, in some scenarios, workers are typically compensated for the off-season, okay? And with this point, we can debate that teachers, for example, okay, also do face seasonal unemployment in some scenarios. And let me justify this. For teachers, they work in a way that they have vacations, okay? Example, our lecturers. Let's assume that we have a particular lecturer who only teaches, how do you call it? Level 100 students, okay? Or teaches level 100, 200, 300, 400. Once you go for vacation, they all go home. And let's say we are going to have a long vac that will last for 4 months. Within that 4 months, the person might not be on for official duties, okay? And please, if we go back to our definition for employment, we are saying it that according to macroeconomics, the person should have at least worked for at least 1 hour within that particular week of reference. But in this scenario, the teacher is home for 4 months. And there might be some months, the person might not be working at all. He might be on holidays and stuff. If we are officially computing employment and unemployment, you will say that per the definitions of employment and unemployment, that teacher might be said to not be employed, okay, or might not be counted as employed, okay. But yes, still at the end of every month, the person is receiving compensation, okay. It is like an official break. If you work in, there are some companies where you are given an off season as well. You can ask for a working leave, okay. So let's say when working, you can apply for a working leave. It works especially in government institutions multiple times in a year, especially people who are in the police force and those kind of stuff. I can 100% confirm. You can apply for a leave, and sometimes you'll be given 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months leave. That period of time, you are not working, okay, and you do not technically fit into the definition of employment, all right, but that person is said to be receiving an income, or the person receives compensation, okay. So typically, that kind of situation can also be termed as seasonal, technically, okay. But please, to easily get your point, use agriculture, an umbrella, a person who works in an umbrella industry or something that is easier for you to explain. Don't go and use an example that you go and get stuck or that you get short of words along the line, okay. And then one reason why seasonal unemployments are not also so critical is because they are predictable. Everybody knows. Somebody working there knows that, look, immediately the rain stops, he's going home. Okay. The teacher knows that immediately vacation comes, he's going home. Farmers know that immediately the rain stops. And no, they didn't know. They can even tell you the exact time when the rain will stop. So it's like everything is predictable. So it gives them ample time to plan. It does not catch them by surprise, like the case of, let's say, cyclical structural unemployment or cyclical or other scenarios where you might be caught off guard, or you might be you might not really see it coming, like that of COVID. You were just there. Nobody could predict COVID was coming. It just hit us like that. And then nobody could also predict a lockdown was coming. One day we were there. I'm sure some of you even ended up getting to work. Okay. We were just there. There was an address, I think in the evening or in the morning or so. The president just announced that, look, there's a lockdown. He's imposing a lockdown. Workers, all schools should close down. They should just shut down. Okay. So seasonal employment, on the other hand, is much more predictable in nature. Okay. And we are saying that in some scenario, it complicates the interpretation of unemployment. Let's justify this point. The reason why we are saying that it complicates the interpretation of unemployment is this. I gave a scenario with a teacher. Okay, we said that for a teacher or for a lecturer, when we go for our long vacation, the teacher is unemployed. But let's ask ourselves the question. We said unemployment is a scenario where the person is willing and able to work and is actively looking for a job, right? But cannot get a job to do. But in this scenario, we cannot say that it becomes difficult to tell whether this person is unemployed. Why? Because although the person is home, the person might not be looking for a job, okay? Or the person might be looking for a job. Probably within that period of time, he wants to find himself doing another thing, okay? It becomes difficult to tell, okay? So it depends on situations by situation, like person by person, but you cannot give a general definition for as in unemployment in terms of the seasonal sense with some scenarios. It just varies from specific circumstances to specific circumstances, which makes the interpretation of unemployment very, 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 very difficult. You have to probe further before you can classify the person as unemployed or employed, okay? And the person is not also a discouraged worker as well. Some people, they are just not outside the labor force, or they are not in the labor force, in a sense where the person is now unemployed. Why? Because they are on a long vacation, or the person is off, but he doesn't want to work as well. The person cannot be said to be unemployed. He's just outside the labor force. He's not also discouraged, so you cannot call that person a discouraged worker. Okay, so that is the justification for that point. So cyclical unemployment. So when you say unemployment is cyclical, we are basically talking about the type of unemployment that occurs during recessions. And a perfect example is the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic struck us, and all of a sudden, look, everybody had to stay in their room. What happened? There was a deficiency of demand. The demand for goods dropped massively, especially in specific sectors like, let's say, restaurants. Okay, if you are running a restaurant, you might probably have been laid off. Fuel attendants, because companies are no more working. People are no more going out. They are stuck. in their houses. That means that the amount of cars that will be buying fuel at the various fuel pumps will be very, very minimum, okay, or will be down to almost the bare minimum. That will mean that, let's say, a company like Goil or Star Oil has to lay off some workers because they might not even make enough profits to pay off their workers, okay, or they might not need all those extra workers. They might just have to lay off some workers to keep the ones that can supply their demand or that can be able to meet to their demand, okay? So we are basically saying that an cyclical unemployment, it occurs during recessions. If you give an instance to explain cyclical unemployment and the case of a recession does not apply, automatically you are not defining cyclical unemployment because the key word in defining cyclical unemployment is economic recessions. That is something that happens to a nation. We said a recession is basically a system where there is a contraction for over 6 months, or where is the economic downturn for over 6 months. Okay, we term that scenario as a recession. So there must be a scenario or something happening in the nation that causes that. And an example of a recession is political instability. In a case when you go to countries like Somalia and some of these places where there is conflicts, the people cannot work. They are just in their home. They are just like under lockdown. In that same scenario, how would you open your home? Companies cannot run in such places. Demand drops to the bare minimum. Why? Because people are not receiving an income. They do not have the ability to spend. Okay, and that literally creates a recession. And um, yeah, so that is what typically a recession is. You can also have other instances that would also fit into the definition of a recession. The key word is that you should be able to outline how a recession takes place in your definition, or the example that you use to define should justify. Okay. And in economics, one key thing you should note is that whenever you are explaining something, usually using examples in them is very, very ideal because it helps the whoever is marking know that you really understand what you are explaining, or it helps the person understand. Like sometimes your words might not be perfect, but the example alone will let the person understand that no, this person understands the exact context that he's referring to, but just doesn't have enough words to explain them. And if the person marking is generous, they will give you the full mark. Some will just give you part of the mark and deduct something for that. Okay. So let's move forward. So unemployment is higher than normal in the trough and lower than normal during peaks. We stated this during the business cycle diagram, right? We said that on the business cycle diagram, this is our peak, this is our trough, right? Yeah, so unemployment is higher than normal during our trough. That is us at this point because everything is moving down. And we said when there is a contraction, it discourages investments, right? Company starts to, as in, like pull out of the system, starts employment is usually on the rise. And when that happens, yeah, we have a rising issue of employment in the trough, okay? But when we are at the peak, unemployment is usually at the bare minimum because the economy is booming. You have investors coming in and they want to invest in the economy, hence employing more people, which increases our employment, okay? So I've talked about cyclical, I've talked about seasonal, I've talked about structural, okay? So structural unemployment is a kind of unemployment that arises because of the number of jobs available in the labor market is insufficient to provide a job for everyone who wants one. Well, okay. So our main definition for structural unemployment, okay, is that it results because of the changes in the structure of an economy, okay? And it basically occurs when there are jobs, all right, but then it doesn't match there's a mismatch between the jobs available and then the skills of the people. Okay, so changes in the pattern of demand resulting in a long-term mismatch between skills and the available jobs. So basically, we are using the same example of Amma being a teacher as a case study. Amma is a teacher, and something happens, and then let's say the school is saying that okay, now we are going into the digital era. And in the digital era, I want to use projectors. You want to use like those kind of things, touch screens and stuff to teach the students. But here is Amma. She has no digital skills. She can only teach with a marker and a whiteboard. What happens is that Amma needs to be trained when it comes to using this whiteboard and then the touch screen and those things. But the school says that, look, Amma, we don't have time to train you. Probably it will take 3 months. And the school doesn't have that 3 months to waste. So they decide to sack Amma and then employ a new person. Yeah. Please, does anyone have any question? Anyone wants to say something? Okay. So because of Amma's mismatch in terms of the job available and her skills, she becomes unemployed. Or we can also say that the jobs are existing. The person is unemployed, all right. But look, the person cannot even apply for the job at the first place because the person does not have the necessary skills for the job. So although the jobs are there in abundance, or the jobs might be there in abundance, but the people just do not have the skills. Okay. And this usually happens essentially in areas or sectors where there is high technological demand. Okay. Basically, you cannot just go there like that to look for a job. There, aside from the main work that you have to do, there are certain task skills that you need in order to be able to thrive in that field. And if you don't have those things, so you realize that maybe a company might be like, oh, they need a whatsoever. They will mention a job offer, and they will add that the person must be proficient in maybe Microsoft Office, and then they will add some other tools and stuff to it. So look, they are literally trying to tell you that you can have the job experience and everything, but if you don't have experience in Microsoft Office, you basically do not fit the kind of worker that they need. Okay, so that scenario is a structural unemployment. Basically, the jobs are there, but the skills do not match. Okay, so fewer jobs opening exist. Changes in technology or international competition, retraining and relocating reduces the unemployment spell. So basically, we are saying that to reduce the unemployment spell here, you basically have to retrain these people, or perhaps relocate to an area where you fit into that particular system. Okay. So also unemployment that arises because the number of jobs available in a labor market is insufficient to provide a job for everyone who wants one. 3 possible reasons: minimum wage laws, unions, and efficiency wages, okay, could be part of the reason. So why is structural unemployment a long-term phenomenon? And then the reason why it's a long-term phenomenon is because it takes a long time to learn the skill. There are some skills which you need time to be able to master. And then relocating to another part of the country, that is relocating somewhere else in order to get to fit into that particular system. Okay. We've spoken about seasonal unemployment. We've spoken about cyclical unemployment. All right. So I stated earlier that zero unemployment is always impossible in a macroeconomic market. Okay. So zero unemployment is always impossible. You cannot have a system where we can see unemployment is 0%. And the goal is full employment where no cyclical unemployment exists in their economy. That's you don't have a recession. The goal is usually to obtain the maximum unemployment rate possible. Okay, so an unemployment rate of 4 to 6% is considered normal during full employment. Okay, so we are even saying that look, during what we term here as full employment, unemployment rate will still hover around 4 to 6%. Okay, standard. So there is nothing like unemployment being 0%. That is a mere fallacy. So at full employment, the level of unemployment corresponds with the natural rate of unemployment. So please, in this scenario, what we term as natural rate of unemployment is 4 to 6%, assuming that there is no case of cyclical unemployment, or there is no case where the economy is experiencing a recession. That one you can have very, very crazy unemployment rates going, let's say, 40%, 50%, and the likes, because that one is a general or a foundational issue causing that unemployment situation, like maybe political instability where there is tribal war. Okay, people can't just work. You might even have about 80% being unemployed. So in the case where there is no case of cyclical unemployment, you are looking at a natural rate of 4 to 6% to represent full employment. Okay, so when we have anything around this percentage, you can still say that there is full employment. So what are the economic costs of unemployment? So unemployment comes at an economic cost. So there is low economic growth as a result of loss in output of the unemployed. This is what we are saying. The more the population, there is a relationship between population, I mean, not just population, but labor force, okay, and then economic growth. So the higher the labor force, the higher the population growth, because you have more people in your labor force, you have more people who can work, okay, and when those people are employed, they in turn increases output, okay, and when they increase output, it causes or it induces economic growth. So the cost of unemployment is that when there is unemployment, it basically reduces economic growth, because you have a lot of people not being able to participate in production or in productivity. Though the people are there, but they are not productive. And if the people are not productive, what will happen is that it slows down or it reduces economic growth because of a loss in output. So for every 1% point increase in the unemployment above the natural rate, output falls by 2 to 3%. You said the natural rate is 4 to 6%, right? So basically, any percentage increase above this, let's say if we have 7%, we have 1 percentage increase above the natural level. And 1 percentage increase will lead to, in unemployment rate, will lead to about 2 to 3% points decline of economic growth. So another effect or another negative effect of unemployment, or another negative economic effect of unemployment, is that it also leads to low savings as a result of low income. Basically, the people are not employed, they do not have jobs, they cannot save. And the next point is that there is an increase in social vices like armed robbers, prostitution, and others. People do not have jobs. They are not earning income. They have to look at alternate means of survival or other ways that they can survive. And what are some of the other ways they might look at? Fraud, internet fraud, armed robbery, prostitution, and all other means of survival. And that is what is going on in our society today. If you study areas or nations where unemployment is very, very, very massive, you always find a high rate of social vices, okay? People are desperate. I think today I was seeing a news that they say 13 armed robbers or so, 3 have been gunned down, 10 have been arrested, and so, and Some people are natural criminals. No matter what you do, they will still be thieves. And some also are in those things because of on the unavailability of jobs for them. Okay, look, this is what you are saying. The person has completed university, he's completed school. His hopes or dream was that he'll get jobs to do. Okay, he's hustled throughout his life. He's now finished school. He's looking to wear suit and tie and sit in an office. But he submitted application letters for 3 consecutive years. He's still not been able to get a job to do. A friend of his comes to negatively influence him that, look, I know a means that can help you get rich quicker, okay? And the friend introduced him to fraud, okay? Do you know what he'll start to do? They'll start calling people, and they'll be telling people that I've sent you 100 CDs and you should reverse this mobile money fraud and all those kind of things. So all those things are direct effects or direct impacts of unemployment. And there will also be political instability through demonstration. Okay, when people are unemployed, usually it creates unrest in the system. You start seeing things like face a country demo. Everybody wants to now voice out their anger to the government. And that leads to political instability, which is unrest. Okay. And there will be family disintegrations. Okay. Basically, you have people who do not have enough income to sustain their family. Children will become truants. You have children having to, like, a whole lot of scenarios. Okay. It can lead to a whole lot of things happening. So those are some of the effects of unemployment, okay, or the broader cost of unemployment. Again, we said we have political instability, we have family disintegration, we have an increase in social vices, we have low savings, and we have low economic growth as an effect of unemployment. So you can also talk of loss of self-respect for the unemployed. So people who are unemployed are basically not respected in our societies, okay, in our society, which highly discriminates on people who, even in families, look, if you are in a family and then the family is doing contributions and stuff and you cannot contribute, you know what happens, right? You are treated as an outcast. And there are psychological effects, okay? So suicidal tendencies, psychiatric episodes, depression, okay, also arises due to that. So there are also health effects like high blood pressure, I mean, and troubled sleep. Also physical effects like domestic violence, alcoholism. Okay, he now wants to vent his frustration on everyone around him. He starts fighting around all those kind of things, beating their wives, beating their kids, and all those things. Not really because they are violent in nature, but it's because, look, they are broke and they are depressed and they just want to vent that on everyone around them. There is setback in achieving social goals, and there is fairness, and inequality. There isn't fairness and inequality here. All right, so that is the end of our session. So there is a simple activity here, okay? That's activity 5.1. Classify each of the following as employed, not employed, or not in the labor force. Please, are we there so that we do this together? Okay, so we are going to answer this problem briefly based on everything we've discussed. We've been given scenarios or case studies, and we are supposed to classify these scenarios or case studies as employed, as not employed, and not in the labor force. So based on our understanding so far on who is employed, who is not employed, and who is not included in the labor force, let us answer this question. So I'll read the question, and then if you would want to answer, you raise your hands. Please, understanding these things are very crucial. Else, you can be given the diagrams can be tweaked or tricked in any manner that they want to, okay? And you should be able to still figure it out. So, scenario 1. Gondi worked 40 hours last week in an office supply store. So, is Gondi employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force? Mr. Freeman.
He's employed.
He's employed. Basically, because we said that for someone to be employed, he should have worked at least greater than an hour, okay, in the reference period. So Gondi is employed. So I'm going to add E to that to denote that. So Gondi is employed. So scenario 2, last week, Liz Jill worked 10 hours as a computer programmer for this national video company and attended 9 classes at the local college. She would prefer a full-time job. Okay, so this question is saying that Liz Jill is a part-time worker. Okay, but then during a week of reference, she worked for 10 hours as a computer programmer for the national video company and attended 9 classes at a local college. So do we say Liz is employed, she's unemployed, or she's not in the labor force? All right, Joshua, Mr. Joshua.
He's employed.
Please come again.
He's employed.
He's employed, okay. I think subsequently, if you give the answer, we give a reason for that. Please, that's 100% correct. So Liz Jill is employed. And the reason why Liz Jill is employed is because within the reference period, she worked for 10 hours as a computer programmer. So scenario 3, so scenario 2, we said that's a practical case of employee. So Rohina lost his job at the Argon manufacturing company. Since then, he has been trying to find a job at other local factories. So Rohina was initially working at Argon manufacturing company, but then that's quite funny. Argon could be Rohina gone or Rohina sacked. Okay, so Argon manufacturing company. Since then, he has been trying to find a job at other local factories. So do we say Rohina is employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force? Right, Mr. Kayum.
Rohina is not employed.
Rohina is not employed. And please, the reason.
The reason is that she loses the job, so she's now finding another one. So you can put it in a is it what structure unemployment or something like that? No.
Okay.
Cyclic. I don't know the reason that she has been
Friction.
sacked. Maybe if it is like she didn't fit for the job, you can go for the structure. But if it is recessional, you can go for the cyclical.
Cyclical, okay. Okay, so that's a nice explanation. So basically here the reason was not given, so we cannot be able to classify the type of unemployment. Okay, so the answer is very, very correct. Rohina is unemployed. So we said the first scenario, employed. Second scenario, employed. Third scenario, unemployed. And the basic reason why Rohina is unemployed is that currently he does not have a job. He has lost his previous job. But then he's trying to find a job. That means he's willing to work and he's currently trying to find one. So we term that as unemployed. But if they were to say here that, let's say, Rohina was not currently looking for a job, or he was not trying to find one, or he's not willing to work, we would have said that he's not in the labor force. But since he's still looking for a job, we say that he's unemployed. So scenario 4, Lily is a homemaker. Last week, she was occupied with her normal household chores. She neither held a job nor looked for a job. So how do we tag Lily, or where do we put Lily? So Mr. Emmanuel.
Yes. So Lily is not in the labor force.
Lily is not in a labor force is a correct answer. And the reason is because she neither held a job nor looked for a job within the reference period. Okay. So within the particular period we are referencing, Lily was not working, and Lily did not also search for a job. Please, let's take note of the keyword reference period. If I don't know whether they would want to do that, our lecturers want to do that to us, okay? But if the reference period is specified, all the scenarios, probably right now, the person could have changed their mind. But if within that reference period, the person was not looking for a job, the person is not in the labor force. Okay, so not in the labor force. So let me use NL for leading. So the next scenario, Liza's father is unable to work. Liza's father is unable to work. The reason was not given. So where do we put Liza's father? All right, Mr. Emmanuel.
Yes, please. So Liza's father is not in the labor force.
It's not in a labor force. Your reason?
Yes, please, because her father is unable to work.
Because he's
For some
unable to
reason.
work. He's not looking for
Yeah.
a work. He's not willing to work. He's not able to work. So he's busy and he's not employed either. So basically, he's just out of the employee section, unemployed section, and he's in the not in the labor force section. Okay. So not in the labor force. So Skonzi has a PhD. He worked full time, but does not like his job as a dishwasher. He has applied for jobs with 3 companies and 5 universities. As soon as he gets an offer, he will quit his current job. Do we classify him as employed, as unemployed, or not in the labor force? Hi, Mr. Felix.
Swansea is employed
Skonzi is employed. So please, the reason.
because within a given time frame, he works, and currently, even though he's looking for other job opportunities, he has a work, so he's employed.
Thank you, sir. So just as Mr. Freeman illustrated or explained, Skonzi is still working because according to the scenario, he's still working, okay, but he just does not like his job and is hoping to get another one so that he'll just move over. But as at the reference period in time, he was still working and has not quit the job. So we can say Skonzi is employed. So scenario 7, Mary Kay has been out of work for a full year. She would take a job if it was offered, but no local companies are hiring. She is not actively searching for a work. Okay, so Mary Kay has been out of work for a full year. She would take a job if it was offered. That is, she's willing to work, but no local companies are hiring. She is not actively searching for a job. So she's willing to work, but is not currently in search for a job. So where do we put Mary Kay? Okay, Mr. Jedidiah.
Unemployed.
Okay, please your reason.
Not. My reason is that she's willing to work, yeah, but she's not actively searching. So due to
Okay.
that, mm,
So please, you are choosing unemployed.
okay, yeah, I'm choosing unemployed.
Okay. Please, I can see other hands are up. That's thank you for the submission. That's a very great submission. Please, Kayum, what do you also have to say?
I can say that he's a discouraged worker, and he's a discouraged worker,
Okay.
and I can put him in like unemployed, yeah,
Okay.
and
That's
not not
that's
not
that.
not the no, not in the labor, no, yeah, unemployed.
Okay. Mr. Freeman.
Mary is unemployed.
Okay.
The reason why I'm saying that is because she is willing and able to work. The last part of the statement says that she is not actively, does not mean that she isn't searching at all. Say that she is not actively searching, but she is
Okay.
searching, but not actively. That means that she is willing and she's able to work.
Okay.
Because it
Okay.
says
So,
that
Mr.
she
Francis,
would take a job if it was offered. So
if
she's
it was
willing and
offered.
able to work. Yes, please. So she's
Okay,
unemployed.
sir. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Francis, your hand was up.
That was the same thing I was about to say.
Okay. So let us clarify this problem. Okay. So with clarifying this problem, I believe it will be ideal that we look at the definition for employed and unemployed again. Okay. So we said that for a person to be unemployed, the person should be without work. They should be available for work. The fact that they are available for work, that means if you offer them job, they will take it. Does not mean that they are unemployed. The person should also have made an effort or had tried to find work within the reference period. So at least the person should have made an effort to find work. That is when we tag the person as unemployed. So discouraged workers are people who have not tried, though they fit into the definition of unemployed exactly, but because they have not tried to find work within the reference period, they are not qualified to be called unemployed. So they are secluded from this set. So there's a whole new set is created for them, which is discouraged workers. Okay. So those people are deemed to technically be outside of the labor force. Basically because even though they are available for work, availability means that if you offer them work, they will take it. Okay. They will do. But they've not made any efforts or they've not tried to find work within the reference period of time. Okay. So for us to tag them as unemployed, we have to make sure that they have at least tried or made an effort within the reference period to find work. So with this said, let us come back to our case study and see if she tried to find work or she did not try to find work within the reference period. So that was Mary Kay, right? So Mary Kay has been out of work for a year. She would take a job if it was working. That is, she's available. Okay, that's availability. We saw that, right? But no local companies are hiring. She is not actively searching. That means she's not made any efforts to find a job. Okay, and we said for the person to be unemployed, the person should at least have made an effort to find a job within the reference period. So since Mary Kay has not made any effort to find a job within the reference period of time, it is ideal that we conclude that she is not in the labor force, because basically she is a discouraged worker, and discouraged workers are not classified as part of the labor force. The labor force deals with only people who are either already employed or available and actively searching, or they are trying to find a job. So please, are we cool with this? Or someone still has a question?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. So that is a twist that we could have here. And please, all these twists could be represented in diagrams. You can be given a diagram, and usually there is a thin line between, let's say, employed and unemployed, or unemployed and discouraged worker. And you would have to figure that out in order to accurately compute what you are supposed to compute. So this is a diagram, and you have to use a table below to answer the questions. So you can see the population here. We have the population which are under 16 are basically 90,000, right? And then you have population which are over 16. They have not been specified. In the military service are 600. In hospitals are 60. In prisons are 200. Those who worked 1 hour or more in previous weeks are 46,000. Those who searched for work during the previous month are 2,140. And those who did not work in the previous week did not look for work, but would have taken a job if one was offered, was 200. So let's label all this metric. So under 16, for them, they are out. We don't even look at them at all. Over 16, that is our adult population, right? So we are just trying to label the terminology. So this is our adult population, which is over 16. In the military force, in the hospital, and in the prison, these people are institutionalized. Okay, so we can classify this set as institutionalized. Okay, and then we have worked 1 hour or more in the previous week. And this is those who are employed, because we said the definition of employment of those who are employed are people who have worked at least 1 hour within our reference period. So this becomes employed. Okay, and then the last section, search for work during previous months. Okay, so that means they were unemployed, but then they were searching for work during that period of time. So we term that as unemployed. Because the key term is availability, and then they are actively finding, or they tried to find for work during that period of time. Did not work in the previous week, did not look for work, but would have taken a job if one was offered. That is discouraged workers, those who are discouraged. For them, they did not look for a job, okay? Though they are available, they would have taken a job if one was offered, but they did not look for one. So that's discouraged. So this is how we label all the metrics, okay? So you will be given, you can be given directly in a question: adult, institution, employed, unemployed, discouraged, labor force. Sometimes they might give you the table like this, and you should be able to know that, okay, this set of people are the adult, this set are the institutionalized, this set are employed, this set are unemployed, this set are discouraged. How large is the labor force? So they are telling you to calculate the labor force, okay? And you know labor force is what? Employed plus unemployed, right? So that gives us what? 2,140 plus, which is our unemployed, right? Plus our employed, which is 46,000. Okay, what would that give us? Is anybody with a calculator?
482140.
So 482140. So we have 4.
482140.
All right, so 46.
6.
Okay, so 462140.
Yes.
Okay. So 462140. How many discouraged workers live in the economy? We already know who are discouraged. That is people. Yeah.
Mr. Isaac.
Yes,
Sorry, I
please.
think it 48140 plus 2,000 adding to 6,000, 8,000. That's
Yeah, I added it 40. Sorry.
so it's 48 rather.
Okay.
Yeah, 48.
So
140.
48140. Thank
Yeah,
you
sorry.
for the correction. Okay. So how many discouraged workers live in the country? We said the discouraged workers are the workers who did not work in the previous week, did not look for work, but would have taken a job if one was offered. Okay. So those are the discouraged workers. And in this contest, our discouraged workers were what? Or are what?
200.
They are 200. How many of the citizens are not in the labor force? A very interesting question. How many of the citizens are not in the labor force? So let's look at how we are going to compute this. Okay. So you said basically the number of people who are not in the labor force are the people who are in the labor force, right? Minus our total population. Okay. And then we also take out a number of people who are under 16, right? So let us clarify this. So we have a total population of what? 60,000, right? So total population is 60,000. Out of these 60,000 people, we know that, so total population is 60,000, okay? Out of these 60,000 people, we know that those who are in the labor force, right, is the employed plus unemployed, which is 48,000, right? Um, 48,140. So we have 48,140 as the total number of people who are in the labor force, right? Which is employed plus unemployed. So if you subtract these people from our total population, ideally we should get a number of people who are not in the labor force, okay? But again, we stated a rule earlier, okay, that the number of people who are under 16 are not also ideal candidates when it comes to all these 3 sessions. Okay, so let's perform the computation. So we have 60,000 people, okay, minus 48,000. Please, can someone do that for me?
11,860.
You had 11,000.
860.
860. Okay. So 11,860 represents people who are within the labor force, who are within the total population, but are not also in the labor force. Okay. But this one also represents people who are under 16 years ideally. Okay. So we might have to subtract people who are under 16 years from this data in order to ideally obtain the number of people who are not in the labor force. So let us perform that subtraction, which is 9,000 from 11,860. So please, let's perform the subtraction, please.
2,860.
2,860. So that represents the accurate figure, okay, for the total number of people who are not in the labor force. Okay, so please, let's always take note that we are saying that whenever we are classifying people under the three sections: labor force, not in a labor force, and how do you call it? Not in a working or not in the labor force. I mean, employed, unemployed, and not in the labor force. We always exclude people who are under 16. Okay. The three metrics or the term not in the labor force does not necessarily denote that the people, all aspects of the population who do not fit or who are employed and unemployed. It denotes the total number of people who are in the adult population. Please take note. Who are in the adult population, okay, but are not currently in the labor force. So another way of computing this is to first find your adult population. And how do you find your adult population? You subtract your under 16 from your 60,000, okay? And if you subtract your under 16 from 60,000, what are you going to get? You are going to get 51,000, okay? And then that 51,000, you subtract your people in the labor force from this. Let's do that. So 51,000 minus 46. 51,000 minus our labor force, which is 48,140. Please, let's perform the calculation again. 51,000 minus 48,140,
2,860.
which is the same figure, right? So if you methodologies, you would arrive at the same figure as your answer, okay? But an ideal method for me for this question would be to compute your adult population and then directly it suits the definition better, okay? Because people who are not in the labor force are people who are in the adult population but are not currently employed or unemployed. So the original formula is our adult population minus the labor force, okay? So this methodology is much methodologic. I mean, it follows the right sequence of method, okay? And it fits all scenario better than trying to go one by one, which can confuse you along the line. But they would all bring you to the same conclusion. So we said the final answer here is 2,860. And then compute the unemployment rate. If you recall, we said that the formula for calculating unemployment rate is unemployed over the labor force times 100, right? So now we have all our metrics in a handy. Our unemployment rate here. Let me empty this area so that I use that for the calculation. These are past questions on the platform. I'll leave some of them for us to try on our own. So unemployment rate, we have unemployed, right, over the labor force times 100. So in this case, What was our number of people who were unemployed?
2,140.
All right, so 2,140 is unemployed. So we have 2,140 all over our labor force. What is our labor force?
48,000.
48,140.
48,000. All right, so
What?
all over 48,140. And then we multiply everything here by 100, okay? So can we do this and then? So 2,140 over 48,140 times 100. What does it give us?
I like it.
Yes.
Please, is it 100% or 100?
You said it's, come again.
Please, is it 100% or 100?
Times 100, 100.
Oh, okay.
I got 4.4%.
So 4.4% becomes our unemployment rates, okay. So is the unemployed minus the labor force times 100, and that gives you your unemployment rate. It's very cool. Please, are you all cool with this?
Yes.
So you can. So we said 4.4%.
Yes.
Okay. So we are done with this particular question. So I think now we can take the past questions directly. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll share again. Let me locate the files quickly, and then I believe I can share again. Okay, so we are going to solve them in this way. We'll try to look at the most sophisticated ones first, and then we leave the ones which are direct, so that in case we are to encounter that scenarios. I'm trying to open. Where is this thing? Please a second. Please, I'm coming. I found a file, but there is no writing tool here. That's what I'm about to write. That's what I'm trying to sort out. There is no writing to here. Let me share the screen. Please, I believe you cannot see my screen. I'm facing a constraint here, and that is, I'm just looking for a writing tool, something that I can use to write on the screen. Yeah, but I'm not finding one. And please, is there any recommendation or any way I can do that somebody can comment? Let me use the edit button and see. This will not be feasible. Okay, so I think that's my only feasible option as that now. Another time I think I would plan that better. So let me share my screen now. Yeah, so that's my only feasible option per time. Okay. So please, sorry for that. I think there are a lot of things on the screen, and those would distract. But please, let's just focus on the document, okay? So this is a data that is available to us, and this is a past question. I chose this particular question because this actually much technical to work around. And this is a question. The table below, please, I believe you can all see my screen, right?
Yes.
Please, I believe you can also. Okay. So let's solve this together. So the table below is the labor market data for the year 2008 for 3 cities. Major values are in thousands. Fill in the blank spaces in the table. Okay. So this is our table given. We have adult population. This is too small. So we have adult population. We have adult population. We have labor force. We have employed. We have unemployed. We have unemployment rates. We have labor force participation rates. So we have a lot of things on our screen currently. Okay, the adult population, the labor force, the employed, the unemployed, the unemployment rates, and the labor force participation rate. So this typically looks like everything has been given to you in a handy, but this is a problem. The problem is that they've computed the graph or the table all right, but then some of the data has been left out. For example, when you come to Bechley, okay, labor force, that is A, is out. So A is missing. So A right here is missing. And they are telling you to find A. B is missing. You are supposed to find B. C is missing. We are supposed to find C. D is missing. D, E, F, G, H, and then I. So let us find all this very, very fast. Please, finding this is enough to solve all the other past questions. Because once you're able to just solve this, you should be able to get your hands around all the formulas and how to apply them. So let us look at the solution to them. So in finding A says that you should find the labor force, okay? We know that the labor force is equal to the employed plus unemployed, okay? So the LF, which is our labor force, is equal to our employed plus unemployed, right? So to compute the labor force for basically, right, what would be our employed in this case? That is 15,627. Okay, so our labor force will be equal to 16,000. If no, 15,000, I mean, sorry. So 15,000 627 plus unemployed is what? 875, right? So 15,627 plus 875. And what would that give us in total? Can someone tell me that?
500.5.
Okay. Okay, so I'll write it at the right hand. I'll use the left to solve, and then I'll write the answers at the right. So 16,000. Please, can you mention the figure again, please?
16,502.5.
520.
502.50.
Okay, so 502.5. Okay, so that becomes our A, which is the labor force in that scenario. Okay, so let me clean everything from here. Okay, so now let's calculate B. So in the data set, B is what? B is our unemployment rate. And to calculate unemployment rate, we use a formula unemployed over the labor force times 100, right? So can we compute that? Okay, and please, they specify that there that unemployment rate is in percentage. So what will be our unemployed for Witchley? That's 875, right? So we have 875 to be our unemployed all over our labor force. Our labor force is the calculation we just did, right? Which is 16,502.5. So 16,502.5. And then we multiply everything by 100, right? That gives us our unemployment rate. So please, can someone point that?
5.3%.
5.327%.
No, 5.3%.
Right, so 5.3% becomes our unemployment rate. Oh, this thing is erasing the, yeah. So our C is our labor force participation rate. And we said that the formula for calculating our labor force participation rate is labor force over our adult population, right, times 100. So our labor force participation rate will be our labor force. Our labor force in this case is what? Employed plus unemployed, which is 16,525. It's 16,502.5. So we have 16,502.5, right? Which represents our labor force all over our adult population. So our adult population is what? The question says that's 27,368.50. So 27,368.50 all times 100. Please, can someone key this on the calculator?
60.2.30.
That's our C,
Yeah.
right?
60.29. Yeah,
So
30.
60.30, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 297. So rounded to 30.
Yeah.
Okay. So our D is our adult population. Okay. So the D is saying that you should calculate our adult population. So the question here is, how do we calculate our adult population? This is where everything gets tricky. Okay. Can someone suggest how we calculate our adult population? Or let's give a hint. All right, so let's give a hint. So to calculate the adult population, we know that if we want to find adult population, we always have to look at our labor force participation rate, right? Because that is where adult population is directly referenced. Okay. So our labor force participation rate is equal to the labor force over adult population times 100. So the question here has given you your labor force participation rate, okay, to be 14.3. So we are saying that our labor force participation rate, which is our LFPR, is equal to our labor force, right, over the adult population times 100. So let's apply this formula to solve this. So in the question, we have labor force participation rate to be 14.35%, right? So we are going to put labor force participation rate, which is 14.35%. This is percentage, so it's fair to always use the decimal equivalence of that. Please don't yeah. Okay, we can use that directly because we multiply it by 100. So please, we are cool. That will reverse the process. Okay. That will reverse the process. So 14.35 is equal to our labor force. Our labor force in that particular context is what? This, right? Which is 6,107.50. So we have 6,6717 points. This thing is just worrying me. I wish I had the other instead. 6,717.50 all over the adult population. And the adult population has not been given. So we put D there, right? Which is what was given times 100. So here we know what to do, right?
Yeah.
If we use cross multiplication, we have
We change
14.35D. We have 14.35D is equal to 6717.5 times 100. Please, can someone compute that?
671,750.
Please come again. That's, you said 67,000.
671,750.
Okay, 671.
671,700.
Okay, 671,750. Okay. All over yeah. So you divide this by 14.35. Okay. Or we can basically say that D is equal to, because if you divide both sides by 14.35, that gives you D is equal to 671,750, right? Over 14.35. And what would that give us?
68,811.54.
So 68,811 point what?
No, 46,811.84.
Okay, so 46. Let me get this off. So 46,000. Can you repeat that again? 46,000.
Yeah, 46,811.885. Yeah, let's say 85.85.
Yeah, 0.85. Okay. So that becomes our D. Our D is equal to 46,811.65. So our E is what? Our E seeks to calculate what? Our employed. So I think that one is much simple, because we have our labor force already given, right? So we have our labor force, we have our unemployed. So in this case, we are going to use the formula. Let me put the formula very fast. Oh, what's happening? Oh, this thing is very annoying. So let us continue. So we said that in this scenario, we can use a formula that's our labor force is equal to employed plus unemployed, right? So we have those who are employed plus those who are unemployed. So if you, in this case, we are finding the employed, giving the labor force and unemployed. So we know that employed will be labor force minus unemployed, right? So employed is equal to labor force minus unemployed. Please, you can try writing everything at your end, because I'm really struggling to use this particular tool to write. Okay, so employed is equal to labor force minus unemployed. So our labor force is what? our labor force is 6,717.50, right? And then, so we are going to subtract our unemployed, which is 644.25 from that. So 6717.50 minus 644.25 will be our answer. So our employed is going to be what? Can someone do the computation and then help us with the final answer?
$6,073.25.
Okay, so you said you had what? 6,000.
And 73.25.
Okay, so 6,073.25. And that becomes our E. Point 2.5. And then we have a lot more to calculate. So we have F. F is what? Unemployment rate. I believe for unemployment rate, we can all calculate. So unemployed over labor force times 100, okay? And then our G is our employed. And we can also calculate that, right? Our employed will be our labor force minus unemployed. But let's look at the J section here. There is a catch here. You can see that the J section here, we can directly calculate unemployed as the labor force minus employed, right? But here is a case that you've not been given both employed and unemployed. So how are you going to go about this? How are you going to go about this? Okay, since you have been given the unemployment rate, check the unemployment rate section. We know unemployment rate section is our unemployed over labor force, right? So unemployment rate is equal to unemployed over labor force times 100. We can use this relationship to quickly find the number of people who are unemployed. So our unemployment rate in this scenario is 2.43, right, percent. So we are going to have 2.43%, okay? So 2.43% is equal to our unemployed, which is what? H over labor force, all divided by our labor force, which is 9,897, right?
Yeah.
0.75 and times 100, right? If we calculate this right here, that gives us our age. So please, I believe we all got how we found the unemployed. And now when you have the unemployed, you can easily calculate the employed now, right? Because labor force is equal to employed is equal to labor force minus unemployed, right? So you just subtract unemployed minus labor force and you are going to get your employed. So that's how you can calculate your G and your H. And your I is easy, your labor force participation rate, which is your labor force over your population times 100. And your labor force here is already given. Employed, we will say that by then it's already calculated. I mean, yeah, your employed, I mean, over the adult population. So, sorry, the labor force participation is as the labor force over adult population times 100. Your labor force is 9,897.75. Your adult population is 17,539, and then you multiply your answer by 100. And then you have your labor force participation rate. Okay. In other scenarios, there is another metric that is called the employment participation rate. It also exists. Okay, so the employment participation rate is basically the employed over the adult population times 100 as well. So that's how you can solve this particular past question, and you are done. Okay. They are good to go. And the B is using examples, briefly explain structural unemployment, that is unemployment that is caused as a result of a mismatch between the available employment opportunities and then the skill set of the people. Cyclical unemployment that is created due to recessions. Seasonal unemployment that is created or that occurs as a result of changes in seasons. And you realize that there's frictional also. Okay, that's the time period where one changes from one job to another. And they said using examples. Okay, so that's how important it is to always have fitting examples. So for me, this is the suggestion that I will give. Okay, subject to your own personal interpretation to it. Make sure that you, in preparing yourself for examination, you have at least one example for frictional in your mind, one example for unemployed, structural unemployment in your mind, one example for cyclical in your mind, and one example for seasonal in your mind. In case something like that comes, you know the examples that you are going to give, and you already know how to justify that answer, okay, to fit that particular type of unemployment you are creating. You shouldn't wait till you get to the examination before you now start thinking about which will fit and which not to fit. Do you know what will happen? What will happen is that you start all right and then you get short of words, or along the line you will be struggling to get the appropriate ways to explain that. So you always have to prepare for that scenario. That if this comes, this is the example I'm going to use for this example, for this example, for this example, for that. Okay. So basically, we are cleared for this particular question set. So please, any questions so far? Or if there was anything we did here that you did not understand, please kindly let us know right now so that we clarify that, please. All right, so we can take it as everybody is okay with what just transpired. Okay. So let's take another past question and look at how we could have solved that particular past question. All right, so let me share this other past questions. But I think so far, amongst all the past questions, all the rest are very much manageable. All right, so let me share the screen now. All right, so this is another past question here. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a writing tool right here, and this does not make sense either. So I might not even attempt to write at all. So please, let's explain how you can provide solution to this. All right, Joshua, your hand is up.
Can we solve it so that the next time you discuss it, like individually?
Come again.
Can we solve it individually?
Okay, so
the
can we?
class?
Okay, that will be perfect. That will be perfect. So what I'm going to do is that after solving this, I'm going to leave the rest for us so that we solve. Okay, and then the next session we meet, we are going to just use 5 minutes to do a very, very quick recap of the solution, and then we are good. Okay, so use A neighboring country has made available the following information about their population. All numbers are in millions. So population, we have 2020, 2021. So there are reference periods, okay? So please, the question here is segregated into reference periods, okay? So that means that the question that is asked might be in regards to a particular reference period. So you just provide the information that kind of fits that purpose. So you have population in 2020, adult population, number of unemployed, and you have number of employed, okay? So the first question is saying that using the information to respond to the question that, use the information to respond to the question that follows. And what are the questions that follows? Please, I'm coming. Let me see if I'll get it right into here. Unfortunately not. Oh. So yeah, so you use the information to respond to the questions that follows. What is the size of the labor force in 2020 and in 2021? Okay. So what is the size of the labor force in 2020 and 2021? And we said the labor forces are employed plus unemployed, right? So to find the size of the labor force, you take 2020 and then you add employed to the number of people unemployed. Luckily for this question, the data has already been given and it's just in plain sight. So it's just much straightforward. So in question 2, calculate the labor force participation rate in 2020 and 2021. So I believe you first calculate the labor force for both 2020 and 2021. And the labor force for 2020 is unemployed plus employed. Then you calculate the unemployed plus employed. You would have already calculated that in your eye. So you use your labor force to come and calculate your labor force participation rate, right? Which is labor force over the adult population, which has also been given in the data, times 100. So what was the unemployment rate in 2020 and 2021? We said the unemployment rate is the number of people unemployed over labor force times 100. So you find the unemployed, right? That has also been given. So for 2020, 6.4 over the labor force, right? Which you would have calculated in I times 100. So you come and do the same thing for 2021, you are good to go. And what trend do we observe in III? Okay, so after calculating the III, you are asked that what trend do you observe? So basically, you contrast or you compare the two responses that you got for 2020 and 2021. Okay, and that is that. So please, I believe we are good with that. So this past question is much easier to work with. And this past question is also, I think, is it the same as what we did earlier? Yeah, this is the same past question as what we did earlier. Okay. And please, the rest of the past questions are on the platforms, and we can try our hands on them. So please, would we want a collective review of all the past questions, or we would want to try it out as Joshua has suggested? I think currently I just want to go with what Joshua stated. That is, we trying it out on our own. So if no one has an objection to that, then I think we can all agree that we are going to try the rest of the past questions on our own. Okay, so on that note, let's take questions, or if there is anything anybody wants to contribute. And if not, then we can close. I think today that's quite early, but the honest truth, or what I want to do is, I don't want to cluster the topics, okay? I just wanted us to, we have enough sections to finish. We have enough sessions to finish all the sessions that are supposed to be covered, okay? Before the paper, okay? We would have a total of 9 sections per my calculation before the paper. So that means that we have enough session to treat every topic and solve past questions under that. So we are going to use every section to solve one topic and then solve questions under the topic, which is past questions under the topic. That's what we are going to do. So I don't really want us to combine everything together. That will end up confusing you. Let's say just after this, we go and look at national income and we are calculating GDP under the same section. Okay, so let's take this time from now to 10 p.m. We can just go back into all the questions on the platform and try to apply what we've just studied right here to see if we can figure out the solutions for the questions. Okay. In case you encounter any question that you cannot solve or you find it difficult to solve, please kindly draw our attention to it on the platform. I believe we have other people there that might be able to help out on the platform. So if there is no question at this point, then I might plead to end the meeting for tonight. All right, please, and let's have a very, very wonderful night. I believe tomorrow we have statistics, so we would meet again. We are supposed to have 2 sessions next week on Wednesday and Thursday, I believe. So we would meet again on Wednesday and Thursday.